Okay, so let's get this thing kicked off. Again, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everybody joining us from parts around the world. I'm Marianne McDonough, and I'll be your host for today's event, Erwin Evolve Virtual User Group Meeting. And before we get into the meat of what I think is going to be a really great session today, I just wanted to do a couple housekeeping tips to just sort of set the stage. We're going to keep your lines in listen-only mode throughout the duration of the presentation. But we would love it if you would ask questions. The last time when we did this a few months back, we had a highly engaged audience, and all of our great speakers had a ton of really good questions that were asked to them. So that's what they're here for. It's about learning from each other and really sharing best practices. So we encourage you to type a question at any time into the tab on the lower right, and we'll actually save those questions for the Q&A session at the very end. And because this is something that we always get asked in the chat during the presentation, we will send out a copy of this presentation as well as the recording to everybody who has attended once the event is concluded. So it's my great pleasure to be able to introduce to you Wendy Petty, who is our Chief Sales Officer, and she's going to kick things off and talk to you a little bit about the agenda and then just take you through a few slides. Over to you, Wendy.
Thank you, Marianne, and good morning, good evening, and welcome to everyone joining us today. We've actually have a very diverse group on the call and people joining. What I'll do is I'll take you through the agenda and then talk to you a little bit about some of the things that are taking place within Erwin. As Marianne said, this is the second round of our Erwin user groups, and what we found the first time is that what's most important to our users are actually hearing from other users. So I'd like to actually welcome Ryan, who is from Southern Cal Edison and is responsible for process architecture and improvement at Southern Cal Ed, and he'll be our first guest speaker. And then Tony Mauro, if you are an existing user, probably all know very well. Tony is responsible for our professional services organization and has been key in the success of our Evolve business. And he's going to take you through really a philosophy around data architecture and process and how it's better together. And then after Tony will be Danielle Kelly from Astellas. Danielle is responsible for quality and process excellence at Astellas. And then we'll close out with Manuel. Manuel is our product management director for our Evolve solution, and he's going to demonstrate Evolve Harvester, and then of course we'll take it into Q&A. Before we jump, Marianne, I'd like just to say a few words, and that is really to thank everyone for joining us today. We really appreciate you taking the time to learn more about all the exciting changes that we are making, here at Erwin. I wanted to especially take a moment to thank all of our customers that have been using Evolve, formerly Casewise, over the past years. Your commitment and the use of the solution has enabled us to grow our business and our company in a way that we probably never envisioned. I really, appreciate the feedback that we get from our customers and the open collaboration that we have with you. And that for those that are attending the event today, learning from our customers. If you're not a customer today, you might be looking at our solutions. You might be a partner who's interested in selling our solutions. But our customers are, those that have made us successful. So again, thank you. And we are committed to giving you our very best every single day, and appreciate the support of everyone from a customer perspective and those that will soon join the Erwin family. So let's jump into the day, or the next hour and a half anyway. And it's kind of timely that we have, this opening that, Gartner talks about EA in a changing world. and I'm gonna just kind of let you read what their thoughts are around enterprise architecture, business process, and technology innovation, and just kind of give you my perspective of what we see happening in the industry today, and some of the things that our customers are sharing with us around enterprise architecture, business process, and on top of that, what has become so relevant, more so than ever before, is the explosion of data. And it's really interesting because now is the time that enterprise architecture and business process is cool again. And if you think about, this changing world that we all have to embrace in a completely different way, it gives us so many opportunities to think about our business and to think about this digital transformation that is actually taking place in every single company around the world. We had to think pre-COVID, who would have thought that we would have been where we are today? We had to think, and we have to think COVID as we're in it, and we have to think beyond that. And if we think about all those different aspects that take place as companies are transforming during this changing time, the importance of digital technology is so important to all aspects of our business. We have to fundamentally now think about how we will continually change, not only to support your customers, our customers, but even our employees, in our own organizations. And part of this change and how you change your companies is so relevant right now. And at Erwin, we actually have the opportunity in so many different ways to work with customers and see how they're transforming their business and how the Erwin solutions have become critical, truly critical applications in their environments. And what you'll hear and learn from both, Ryan and Danielle, is that our solutions have become the single source of truth for data, for process, for architecture. There are so many different moving parts that there has to be the process of thinking about, with all this change, how can I better manage my environment? With all of the technology changing so quickly, people moving from prem to the cloud, how can I document, how can I create a model that is available to everybody within the organization so that everyone understands what data is tied to what applications and what processes? So we also have evaluated our business, and we communicate, our solutions to our prospects and our change on a regular basis. And I'm going to use ourselves as a perfect example of transformation and why we actually move from the case-wise solution to what we now call Evolve. So what you'll hear through the next hour and a half is, how can you leverage our enterprise architecture, our business process solution, what we now call Evolve, in order to help you through this digital transformation. So Marianne, if you go to the next slide, let me just share with you a little bit of the change that we made to the Erwin Evolve suite. And it is more important now than ever before of aligning business and IT to drive successful transformation with enterprise architecture and business process modeling and the analysis of it. So what we've basically done is we've created a much easier way to understand, to implement, and to utilize the Evolve platform, to give you the ability to modify and edit diagrams on the fly with our new Evolve Web Modeler that our customers are adapting and learning about on a regular basis. The benefit, what you've all been asking for years, give me the benefit to be able to collaborate, to create my diagrams, to create my models, to share it in a more user-friendly format. And also this idea of, the collaboration, how important it is today as things change so quickly, to be able to do it in a very easy format, on a, in an online environment, more in tune with 2020 as opposed to the past. And some of the other things that that you're familiar with that haven't changed, that are still so important, is the documentation, and the generation of that documentation, the analytics that are available to you in the platform, the things that we've added from a frameworks perspective, so that now we've got the support for TOGAF and for DODAF. And what you'll learn, and what you'll be seeing as we have, and I love to use this word, we've evolved to the Erwin Evolve platform. We've designed it to make it much easier for you to understand, for you to implement, and for you really to bring your business and IT together, and to really create the single point of truth within your organization with the Evolve suite. If we go to now, and just kind of, if I can summarize for you, because I really want to hand it over to the presenters, is a little bit about what we've been doing from a edge platform perspective at Erwin, and the importance of data for everyone. And the core of our business is our enterprise data governance experience, what we call Edge. And in the heart of Edge is what everyone's biggest challenge today is data intelligence, is really understanding where your data is, how you can find it, how you can monetize it, how you can report on it, and how you can visualize it. And what we've learned from our customers, and we've, this has been our strategy since we started, the company, is to really be able to understand where this data is and do it in an easily format, and to be able to catalog it, and to be able to do mappings, and to be able to do the lineage and to see it. And what's exciting is we just announced the latest version of our data intelligence suite, that again, our focus on tying business and IT together has now given us the ability, from a visualization perspective and a business user insight, to where their data is, how they find it, and the lineage of it. But what I want to share with you that is actually even more exciting is, this vision of our Edge platform, where our customers are asking us to be able to tie data to process, and to enterprise architecture, and to be able to integrate the three. And because we have the solutions that enable us to do that with Evolve, with our data modeling solution and our data intelligence solution, you now have the capability of doing that. In the past, it wasn't, for whatever reason, it wasn't so important. But today it is. It's important to understand how the processes and how the data is all tied together. So we're excited with the releases of not only our data intelligence suite, but our latest version of data modeling 2020 R2 that supports the Snowflake cloud platform. When we're bringing our solutions to market, the way that we've been developing from an agile perspective has taken us, leaps and bounds into completely different places, whereas, as I said earlier, our solutions are becoming mission critical to the largest enterprises in the world. So if we just kind of move on to the next slide, and just let you know that we are here to help, that we are here to help you transform your business. We are here to help you understand our solutions. We're here to listen, and we're here to work with you to make you successful, to make your company successful, and to build strategic partnerships. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Ryan.
All right, let me know when you guys can see my screen. Let's switch here. You guys see the presentation all right? Let's move this off to the side.
Actually,
right.
Hey, Ryan, you just need to click the slides in the web. You don't need to bring it up on your own machine, because we've got it all loaded up for you.
Oh, okay. Sounds good. Let me.
Just makes it easier for folks to see.
Okay, then let me stop sharing my screen.
Okay, you're good.
Okay. I do not see anything, but we'll see. All right. Yeah, I don't see a.
Hey, can we just get a quick chat out there to the world saying, are you guys seeing the Southern California Edison profile right now?
No, we can't, Marion.
Okay, interesting. Just give us 1 second. Sorry about this, folks. No matter how many times you rehearse, something fun always happens.
Oh, good.
Okay, how about now?
Good.
Excellent. Okay, Ryan, let's rock and roll, and you just tell me next. How about that? Okay.
All right, we'll try that. All right. So just a little bit of background, Southern California Edison. So we are one of the largest electrical utilities, been around about 125 years. We've got over 5 million customers, and we've got over 1.4 million poles, et cetera. So as you can imagine, that's a lot of data, a lot of information, and because we've been around so long, a lot of various processes that, to use the pun, right, have evolved over time, right? Let's go ahead and go to the next slide, and then go ahead and just hit a few times till we get everything popped up. All right, so we started, as you know, we've been using Casewise and Evolve and all that sort of stuff. So we started about 19 years ago. So we've been using the product a little while, but so we started with business process modeling and architecture, trying to understand the business, and then kind of moved into, okay, what can we do from there, kind of thing. So no, go ahead and go to the next slide. You're good. And then let's hit one more time. All right, that'll work. So, whoops, too quick. It's gonna be fun. All right, so again, I like to say, you know, journey of 1,000 miles begins with the first step. And so for us, one of the first things we had to do was to standardize and look for best practices and making sure we're all speaking the same language, right? Can't get anywhere if you don't have a map, and that map needs a legend so that when you tell someone to go X amount of spaces, that one doesn't end up in Albuquerque and the other one doesn't end up in Timbuktu, right, kind of thing. So we really spent some time understanding what, you know, the right standards were so that we're all speaking the same language. And that was the other thing that we really benefited when we were starting to dive into understanding our processes was, hey, you know, this picture actually provides a better perspective. With that said, you know, we also had some key design principles that we made sure we adhered to, right? You work with and understand in those that are actually performing the process. And so we realized early on that there's a difference between business expertise and process expertise. And it's really when you partner the two that you really start to see opportunities for success. You know, as we were listening to those business performers, we were hearing their pain. Though all that pain, there's opportunity there. And so that's kind of what led us into our next step, which if you go into the next slide. So this is just an example of us, you know, how our percentages by our different business lines, how much we were documenting the process and so on. It was just kind of one of our tracking mechanisms to show our progress and, you know, maturity in the space. You can go to the next slide. So this was an example of, you know, we performed what we called process workshops, where, as I mentioned, you'd get that process expert and that business expert in a room, and you'd start filling in the blanks, you know, try to address the gaps. And as part of that, you'd identify, this was the beauty of using, Casewise and all that. And Erwin was, we can use one tool to document both the process, the issues, the action items, and the decisions that we were making. So let's go ahead and go to the next slide. All right, so as and you'll kind of see, this was a puzzle, this was a journey. We like to use the term art of the possible. And so, it all comes down to the creativity and the urgency of what you're trying to address. So go ahead and just hit down so we can get the animation going. All right, perfect. So one of the big things that, we're a utility. Several of our leaders that have come up through the ranks came from the field. One thing that you learn in transmission and distribution is, we're blunt and we're to the point. And so there's no messing around. They'll come at you and tell you how they really feel. And so that's been a huge benefit for us, frankly, because that allowed us to strive for the next objective, right? What more could we do? So this little quote was actually from one of our leaders who was saying, hey, this is a pretty picture. It was great what you presented, but now what? What can we do with this to help make more informed business decisions? And so we said, well, let us show you. And so we really started diving into running simulations. So as I mentioned earlier, that pain that we heard, we took those as opportunities and we started to design, what if scenarios. You also hear the term to be scenarios, right? And the power of that simulation allowed us to say, hey, these actually are where the benefits are. This simulation, this scenario actually has better benefits here. It also let us know as we were designing that to be, where did we need to adjust and shift resources, which allowed us to better prepare. And of course, we wanted these processes to live on. And so we took those process maps and we're actually able to translate them and have them feed into process-driven procedures. So actual step-by-step actions and policies that people could follow to execute their work. So that was kind of one of our biggest first steps into translating from architecture into having the operations truly use this as part of their day-to-day. Let's go to the next slide. So that led us into, hey, there's all these great opportunities. We really need to approach this in a more comprehensive end-to-end way, which led the company towards an ERP implementation. And so we were driven or had selected SAP as our ERP tool of choice. So as we were going through our ERP implementations, we had several releases. Release 3 was where it really impacted the core of the operations in T&D, which we call transmission and distribution. Those are the ones keeping the lights on, right? And so there was a strong push to do that whole implementation and that effort from a process perspective. And so we stepped back and we said, okay, well, if the business is going to drive this and the business is going to be impacted, we need to understand how these systems play in that end-to-end process. And so that actually allowed us to, by starting with the process, really allowed us to drive solutions throughout the whole life cycle. And so if you go to the next slide. Yeah, this is fine. So one of the big things that we discovered was a challenge around change management. Big shock, right? We're making a significant change in our operations. And with that significant change, we're trying to figure out, okay, well, who needs what access? And, what training do they need to go? And how are we going to carve out this training? How are we going to make sure the testing that we do on these systems properly reflects what's going to happen when we flip the switch? And so this is where, again, the tool came to the forefront to be able to solve this problem. And so we actually, in our processes, these aren't just two-dimensional pretty pictures. There's content behind these boxes. So we actually created what we call job templates. It was just a grouping of, people that were performing a particular function. So these are our field accountants, these are our analysts, these are our folks that are our supervisors, et cetera, et cetera. And we tied those to the processes. And then at the same time, we tied to the processes the transaction codes and the roles that were going to be needed to be performed. And so what was great, again, tool to the rescue, right? We're able to then do a correlation that says, well, if these people are performing this process, then they need this access, which means they need to go to this training. And so we're actually able to generate enrollment lists in a very quick fashion. Again, that we didn't stop there. So go ahead and go to the next slide. So we started with that process, as I mentioned, and we then were able to say, hey, we can flag where the process is changing. And so that allowed us to be able to give more accurate change impact assessments that say, hey, here's what's happening and to who, and what those differences are. So that really helped inform training so that they knew how to customize the training. And then it helped our testing and our IT folks in, hey, here are some process-based test scripts. So we're actually able to translate these things into test scripts because, hey, we had the transaction codes and we knew what sequence they needed to be performed in. So when we got into integration testing, we were actually able to get closer to what is it going to look like out in when we flip the switch. Let's go to the next slide. All right, so as I talked about, right, we've, this has been a journey for us, right? We've been putting the puzzle pieces together to create a picture that provides a benefit for the operations and for the business as well as to IT. So one of those big questions was, as I mentioned, hey, we want to make sure that we understand and we're ready as a business when we implement this huge change. And so we use some of our steps prior, right? As I mentioned, we leverage simulations and procedures to help us adjust resources and understand how the new world was going to operate. We use those job templates to be able to generate role mapping, who needs access to what. And then all of that information also helped be able to feed process-based training so that when we're teaching folks, our business folks aren't having a really puzzled look on their face when you're talking about some language, that we like to call SAPEs, and they were actually able to understand the context as it related to what the work they performed. So let's move to the next. All right, so the only thing that, after we implemented SAP, one thing that we've definitely learned is the only thing constant is change, right? And the business is ever evolving, ever changing. And it goes back to the old mantra, what have you done for me lately, right? So one of the biggest things that we started to shift into was, okay, we've now implemented an ERP system that's now become an awesome platform for us to then improve further, right? We're constantly evolving. So we then took our knowledge, our skill sets, and we started to apply it to our continuous improvement projects. So we worked with those continuous improvement projects to say, hey, rather than you guys doing everything manually, let's have you guys start, not from scratch, right? So, hey, here's the latest version of what we have from that process that we did. So now they don't have to start from scratch. They can now work on just updating or modifying it for that future state, which again saves time in the analysis phase of a project as well as in the design phase of a project. And then of course, let's not forget the work we did with our job templates and say you might as well use that as well. So now rather than you guys having to manually maintain and figure out with some effort who your impacted audience is and who needs what access and how you're going to get enrolled in training and so on, we can auto-generate those lists as part of that mapping. So again, that allowed them to get these deliverables done at a reduced effort. Let's go ahead and hit the next item. So this is just an example of taking some of our projects and organizing them in a portfolio so that you could see from a stoplight perspective, how are they trending, where are they at? Again, here we're using the tool to help us provide these types of insights and solutions. And then break it down by the type of project and things. So we understand, do we have a good makeup of the type of change that we are working on or implementing as an organization. Let's go to the next one. So, what's always funny about change, right? And the need to improve, and we do have, that's one of our core values as a company, is continuous improvement, and we promote that, is the challenges that you have people that will have similar ideas and want to improve similar things. And they're in different OUs or different organizations. And so the benefit of bringing these different projects together and doing what we call an impact assessment is we actually can see where there's opportunity for integration. So rather than potentially stepping all over each other, there's opportunity to work together and partner in a way that kind of was unheard of before, because you're giving context to it, right? You're going to tackle this process. Oh, this is how you're changing that process. Well, okay, that addresses this downstream issue we're concerned about. Well, now we can address this other element. And so there was definitely some benefits to get these projects to visualize and understand where in the organization or in our business processes are they impacting. And that was kind of the benefit of the assessment. All right, let's go to the next slide. All right, well, so we started to tackle continuous improvement. We, starting to work through how do we deal with that constant change in the business. Well, one of those biggest changes, or one of the biggest drivers for change in our space has to do with regulations, right? We're a very heavily regulated industry. We want to make sure that we're doing right by our customers and we're doing the right thing for the public. And so, we're not shy of going through regular proactive audits, making sure that we're doing our due diligence. Well, anybody that's gone through any type of regulation translation or trying to take that and say, how do we apply these controls into our organization? If you're not also thinking about process and how you can improve the organization while you're doing controls design, you tend to end up with very convoluted, very confusing controls that do the opposite of what your continuous improvement folks are trying to do, which is streamline, reduce waste, cut costs, etc. So we said those two are not mutually exclusive. They absolutely can integrate and work together. And so that was one of the biggest things that we did, was we then went back to our standards and we said, hey, how do we change our standards to include controls and controls design with process improvement and business architecture? And so we started to dive into a different type of framework with our controls. So we targeted where's our risk while we're doing our controls. Let's look at the process. Let's tie it to the process so that we can also drive improvements. And the business understands the impact of implementing that control, right? And then with anything, we should always be looking at the end-to-end, right? Look at the upstream and downstream effect of whatever you're implementing. You can optimize a sub-process and end up sub-optimizing the end-to-end process. And so those were some of the things that we took as part of our principles. And then we should always be measuring to look for ways to improve, right? Did we achieve the results we wanted to achieve? Go ahead and hit the next one. Click. Now, as I mentioned, right, so we've got these new standards, we're starting to integrate, but the biggest bang for the buck is having a single platform, right? What I like to call one-stop shop. Helps when you're working with auditors, right? You go to one place that is your source of truth. Here are our processes. By the way, here's how we have implemented these controls. So here are the list of our controls and where they're implemented in our business. It truly helps cut through a lot of the questions and gets right to the heart of the matter. So it's been a huge benefit to turn around and have positive audit findings and positive audit results, because we clearly have a structure, a plan, and it's easy for them to see the connection between how we're ensuring these controls are adhered to and where those results are in our business processes. And of course, because it's all on one single platform, you've got a single point of contact to get the information you need. Let's go to the next slide, next click, as it were. So as I kind of alluded to all this, right? So now as we have our projects move forward, and they're working through whether it's a compliance project, trying to implement new controls or ensuring adherence to some regulation that has changed, or whether it's a continuous improvement project, now they're all in the same repository, they're able to integrate and work together. Let's go ahead and go to the next slide. So it's great. We've started to identify these things. So what's next? We still have a gap. So I like to say we're going to fill that gap. And it's a little bit of pun on words because my department's name is Governance and Provisioning, which if you look at the acronym is GAP. So we like to play, we love our acronyms, and so you got to make fun ones, right? So anyhow, so where are we going from here as an organization? And so, our next step has been, hey, this has been great. We're really starting to tackle some key areas in our company. But our people are paramount to our success. And, we've got to continue to listen and hear to their frustrations, to their challenges. And so this is now where we go back to that job template and say, hey, these job templates, could be valuable tools, not only just from a standpoint of helping projects, but also to support our onboarding and overall operations. We've defined what hardware, software access people need, what compliance rules they need to follow. So that helps understand maybe what compliance training they need to take as they move between different positions. And so now we're able to take those job templates and use them to help automate our onboarding, take the guessing game out of and the manual processes out of people having to submit requests for accesses and hardware and software, and inform our business partners, our IT, our HR folks, our compliance folks, our access management folks. This is exactly what they need, and auto submit those requests. And so we're using Evolve and the Erwin data transformation tools to help us accomplish that very thing, right? Is to be able to drive efficiencies on a whole nother level because we have the information. And getting that information didn't take as long as you might think, right? And we're a pretty decent sized company, right? It just took, an ongoing thought process of what's next, and hey, what about this, right? And keeping that open mind, right? It's art of the possible. What can we do, right? And being open-minded to be able to achieve it. And so this is now where we're really starting to say, hey, we have this business model, and this business model now can start informing other decisions. And so we have what we call an incident management team. So for those of you that are in California, we had a real concern, and we still do have a concern when it comes to wildfires. And SCE wants to make sure we're doing everything we can to support our public and make sure we're doing our due diligence when it comes to wildfire mitigation, hardening our systems in a way so that when fires do occur, that the lights can still remain on as much as possible, and we're taking the appropriate steps. Well, again, we now have a business model that helps inform us so that we can help respond in a more effective manner. Again, process is how we do our work, right? And so that's been invaluable as well. And at the end of the day, it always comes down to empowering our people. If you just hit the arrow one more time, it should have a little thing that comes up here. So again, one thing I would ask everyone to, if you're taking anything away from this presentation, it's really that, we're going to constantly change. I think we had a great intro to that from Erwin as they're talking about COVID and our environment and where we're at as a world, right? Compared to where we were last year and so on. We're going to constantly change. And one of the biggest benefits and one of the reasons why we have stuck to this tool has been the fact that it is so flexible and adaptable to our business needs. And so that's the biggest takeaway I would ask that you guys think through is, we're always going to be changing and we need something that can change with us. So we should always be looking at, well, what's next, right? Now what? Where should we go from here? And have that roadmap in place. And that roadmap will constantly change because it's a living document and it'll drive you towards more efficient and effective operations. And that's it for me.
Thanks, Ryan. That was awesome. Really interesting. I'm sure we're going to have some good questions at the end. And now we're going to turn it over to Tony Mauro, who's going to sort of pick up on a lot of those themes and talk a little bit about data and process and architecture and how it all works better together. So Tony, just give me the next slide in fact, I'm just going to pop up your first one.
Perfect. Can everybody hear me?
Absolutely.
All right, great. Well, no, it is a very good segue coming off of Ryan's presentation because it is all about, managing constant change. And as an enterprise architect and a process architect, it's the one way that we as an organization keep ourselves relevant to our stakeholders. And really it's being able to manage that change and address key issues that, our stakeholders are facing. And quite honestly, in today's day and age, there are lots of them, right? So our companies are trying to grow. We're trying to cut costs. We're trying to innovate around different ways we engage our customers. We're trying to really manage new technologies that are, quite frankly, disruptions going across the entire landscape. We're trying to manage new and ever-growing compliance items and really kind of ensure that we have the talent needed to drive our business forward. So, our executives look to us as architects to be able to quickly answer questions and to do proper planning around all of these key issues that they are planning for. And that's really how we stay relevant as architects. And you can go to the next slide, Marianne. Yeah, and just let this build out real quick. But there are some very, clear, undeniable truths that we all face as an architecture kind of function within our organizations. Management does not always rely on the architecture artifacts, process artifacts that we produce day to day to make those critical decisions. A lot of the times they go out and hire consultants to come in for 6 months and put together, a debrief package of their recommendations. And also things are changing quite quickly in our current landscape. So our executives are not going to wait around for months as we kind of formulate impact analysis, collect data. It really has to be agile enterprise architecture. And really, truth of the matter is a lot of architecture functions rely strictly on the IT function. It doesn't really have roots within the business and strategic type world. And that's something that, as a function, we have to overcome within our organizations. Next slide, Marianne. And you can just build this out as well. Is it not building?
I'm seeing it fully built on my side.
I don't on mine.
Huh, interesting.
Well, I'll just kind of talk to it. Oh, there it goes.
Oop, now I went too far. There you go.
So what prevents enterprise architects from being successful within our organization? Well, first and foremost, it's a lack of trust in the information that we actually hold within our repository. Because it takes so long to collect and then keep relevant, usually the analysis we produce isn't always accurate and up to date and timely. And that really gets into a true lack of governance around the information and the processes that we have in documenting that information within our enterprises. And like I said, ultimately, this leads to analysis that is not accurate, too small, too narrow of a picture, and it rarely gives us an accurate as-is view of the entire organization so that you can do proper decision making. So as a result, you see architecture functions within organizations that are failing to provide real value to their stakeholders. And one thing we want to do at Erwin is to be able to help close that gap. And not only close that gap, but also reduce the cost it takes to have that proper information that's curated and governed within your architecture repositories. And a clear opportunity that we see as Erwin is the fact that we have a data management and data governance product line that provides a lot of those functionalities that will help manage and govern our enterprise architecture and process model efforts that will keep that information up to date. So next slide, Marianne. So just a quick overview of data governance. So data governance is all about documenting the data architecture within an organization, but not just documenting it for the purpose of documentation's sake. It's documenting it with the whole intention of putting a business understanding around it and having clear traceability and lineage going throughout all of your end-to-end assets so that you can understand what information you have, where did it come from, is it secure, who's accountable for it, who accesses it, and where is it located. And quite frankly, it's a lot of the same concepts that we use for enterprise architecture projects or business process modeling projects. It's all about reducing risk, optimizing operations, and increasing the use of trusted data that we want folks to actually use. So if we go to the next slide, Marianne. So what are we actually documenting with data governance? So there's two key concepts here that I'm going to bring up. One is data at rest, and this is the documentation of data sources when they are in a stored state. So these are your databases, these are your flat files, these are your data lakes, your data warehouses. It's capturing all of that information from the columns, the fields, the tables, but it's also overlaying on top of that, what does that actually mean from the business? It's not just talking about the technical data asset itself, but how it's used within the business today. So you have kind of a reference model overlay over your actual data assets, and you're documenting that within a data catalog and a business glossary within our tool. And if you go to the next slide, Marianne, we are also documenting data in motion. And so a lot of the architects on this call will understand this very well. We are documenting source systems, target systems, and the actual data flows that are going in between, and not just the data flows themselves, but also how those data flows are structured from a metadata perspective. So we are collecting all of this information, basically documenting our systems and the interfaces going between our systems and the logical and physical data assets that are flowing over those lines. And if we go to the next slide. So what does this mean from an enterprise architecture perspective? If we have a data governance program in place, a data governance tool in place, we're actually documenting a lot of information that enterprise architects and process modelers usually spend months, if not years, collecting and keeping up to date. So within a data governance repository, we're capturing systems, we're capturing environments, we're capturing databases, and we're capturing data, both logical and physical. Not only that, we are also collecting how those systems are interconnected. So I'm sure a lot of you are starting to realize that if we have all of this information about the data landscape and the systems, we're actually automatically collecting the application architecture within our organizations. And if we have that information, we're going to drastically reduce the time to value by having an as-is architecture that's always up to date because we're managing the data properly. Next slide, Marianne. So this kind of brings me to a little bit of a conclusion here. So one thing we're starting to realize as a company and having these various tools within our organization is the fact that if an organization has an enterprise architecture tool and has a data governance practice, we in fact can start to automate the current state architecture, which is arguably the most expensive, timely, resource-intensive aspect of architecture to have at your fingertips. But then at the same time, it's also critical to answer, the executive's questions. You can't do impact analysis if you don't understand the current state architecture. And it's not going to be delivered quick enough if you don't have it documented. So some very clear use cases that we have as far as using data governance with enterprise architecture, first and foremost, we can automatically start to document the application inventory automatically because we are scanning systems and understanding the data architecture itself. We are pre-populating our interface inventory and application lineage and data flows, which gives you your clear-cut dependencies going between all of your applications and your systems. And then we're also starting to filter into our process and application architecture diagrams the concepts of regulations and compliance. Because not only are we looking at the data and where it's going to, we're also understanding what type of data is in those systems and what systems are actually touching them. So we can start to classify things for things like GDPR or CCPA, any of those types of compliance items, so that we do have an up-to-date repository that actually reflects the true regulation and compliance item, not just somebody's best guess on what it actually is. And then obviously all this information flows into our processing controls and will ultimately get us to real-time true impact analysis and traceability. Last slide, Marianne, I believe. So in conclusion, using data governance for enterprise architecture is going to give us a data-driven architecture, reducing that time to value and really showing true results to your executives. It's going to help us manage risk better because it is real-time information coming into the EA space, and it is going to help us react quicker to answer those questions that our stakeholders that ultimately will drive business transformation. So, as Erwin, we see this as a game changer for us. It's really going to help drive value for our enterprise architects. And I think later on, Manuel is going to show some of kind of the technical aspects of how all this fits together.
Hey, thanks, Tony. That was awesome, especially on the heels of Ryan's conversation about, the data and the process together. I thought that was a really interesting, and also in using a lot of the language that, all of our architecture and process professionals on the phone recognize, right? Data governance shouldn't be something that's scary. It's actually something that is really so closely aligned to the wheelhouse that they operate in every day.
Absolutely.
Well, now, It's my great pleasure to now turn the mic and I will be clicking for her over to Danielle Kelly from Astellas. Danielle is an operations and quality professional at Astellas, and she's going to talk to us a little bit about the journey that they've had with Erwin Evolve at Astellas. So ready when you are, Danielle.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. So just to let everyone know too, I'll just add to that a little bit. My role at Astellas is actually in a team that's responsible for driving process improvement initiatives or projects across the medical and development organization. So as part of this team, we are also the primary owner, so the business owner of the use of the Erwin product, so the business process model there. So if you want to go ahead and advance forward, we'll go through and get some technicalities done here. So we have a bit of a legal disclaimer here for everyone. And if you just take a moment to glaze through that or read through that. Oh, can you go back to the disclaimer? I want to just let everyone know as well, if you're not already familiar with Astellas or haven't heard of it before. So Astellas is a pharmaceutical company. We have over 15,000 employees in over 30 countries, and we primarily develop pharmaceutical products across multiple therapeutic areas, including oncology, urology and nephrology, immunology and ophthalmology. And so I think more recently, one of our major products that gets a lot of I guess, publicity or airtime, and a lot of people are familiar with, is Xtandi for prostate cancer. So, but we do have many, many other products as well. So just to give you a little bit of background on what Astellas is. So we are in the pharmaceutical industry. So if you want to go ahead and advance forward, we'll talk a little bit about our journey with this product. So I'm going to walk through at a high level our journey, and then I'd like to focus a bit more time on our key lessons learned and really what we've gotten out of the use of this product. So we actually started in, I think it was 2015, and we started using, at the time, Case-Wise Modeler. So our focus there was really to build out our business processes and develop a narrow scope of process maps. Now, of course, based on not only the product capabilities at the time, but really the scope of the initiative and the use of that product, it really was just developing a repository of process maps. And that's really all it was. It was a repository of process maps that you can go in and look at. And when we implemented that, really what we were doing was very much focused around just using and accessing existing process maps. Whereas as we moved into a couple of years later in early 2017, we did a relaunch of the model that we had. And in that case, we really focused on adoption, okay? So because initially we were really just focused on implementing a repository of process maps, it quickly became out of date. So folks were not using it as much, and as a result, we're not updating it frequently enough. So we didn't really have an overly successful initial implementation of the model. But with that second launch in early 2017, with the new Evolve Dynamic component, that new user interface, we were really able to now not just implement the use of this model, a new look and feel, but also focus around adoption. So this Evolve Dynamic component of the product for us, what we felt really helped promote a more user-friendly and interactive component to the model. It was no longer just a repository of process maps. This was now a full end-to-end model of all of our processes that we chose to put in there. It gave us interdependencies, linkages. We have nice links to information that is housed outside of the model. Things, as Ryan actually mentioned in his presentation as well, things like procedures, job aids, other training that you may have, applications or systems that are used for particular portions of your process. And so we're able to link everything and really act as that one-stop shop. Again, as Ryan had said in his presentation as well. So I think that's a common theme. You can go to one place and see what is the process, what are the applications that we use for that process. Let me open up the procedures or any other relevant information. So it really became very interactive. And suddenly, our users were not just referring to it every now and then or not just aware of it, it really became a helpful tool for many, many of the functions within our company to start using. And then actually quite recently, so late last year, we went ahead and launched an upgrade internally to the system that Erwin had released earlier on. And this is now, using the Evolve Diagrammer portion, which is very new for us, right? So Evolve Dynamics is so user-friendly and I think very intuitive that it's wonderful that now we can actually have select users map directly within that environment, rather than having to have a very, small group of technical experts who can go into the back end and make a lot of those changes or updates. It's much more intuitive and user-friendly to do it on the front end. And what that really has done for us as well is it's allowed us to now expand our operating and resource model. So rather than having, let's say, anywhere from 1 to 2, super users or experts or system administrators, whatever you may call them, who are responsible for making a lot of these updates in the system, we now have a fairly large group. So for us, we've gone up to 3 super users, or system administrators, and we have now 11 process mappers. So these are individuals who are mapping directly in the model with our internal business customers. And I fully expect that number to at least double, if not triple, within the next year or two. So if you want to go ahead and advance forward, throughout this process, of moving forward in the use of the product, we have also had an expanded scope as far as the content that's been in the model. So we have new functions that want to map out their information, that want to be part of this model. And as a result, our user community really continues to expand as well. And so that's just an important note to make, as I go into the lessons learned. So in a way, I almost feel like, I don't know if other folks at other companies have this as well, but the demand for other parts of our company to get into the model, it's almost been difficult to keep up with the demand. But it's been very, very positive. So going into some of the key lessons learned that we had from this journey. So if you want to go ahead and advance forward to the next slide. A couple of key components here, I think, that really stuck true with us. Throughout the course of our use and really our journey with this model, we have had multiple requests from within the company to have different instances of the software. And so essentially what that's going to do is you will have separate standalone models, And for us, what we've really found is it's best to try to avoid that as much as possible. So it's really wonderful, I think, if you can have one model, even if it includes functions or processes that are so different and on other sides of the universe, and you think, why would we need to relate these? At some point, there is a connection between them. And at the very least, if you don't need that, then great, there's no connection, but it still doesn't hurt to have them in the same model. So for example, whether it's sales and marketing or, on the commercial side and manufacturing of our products, or if it's where, for us, our model originated, where we actually develop and study and conduct clinical trials and determine if it's safe and effective, our products. Those two sides of the company, right, opposite sides of the coin, but very much have to work with one another. It's best to have all of that within the same model. Again, it helps ensure that we have those links and those interdependencies across different processes. So I really recommend that you try to keep it as one model if at all possible. Now, of course, as you start to have more of these different functions that come into the same model, you're going to have some differences. differences, of course, in their process, but I think even different different ideas of how the maps should look, okay, and how content should be presented. And so this is where you're really going to want to focus on standardizing. So when we initially started, we had some basic standards, and of course some of that is maintaining your templates for your model and your maps. However, I think even more so as we've had to expand, we've had to focus more and more on honing those in and fine-tuning those standards and best practices, because it's important that while we do have one model, we really want it to have the same language, right, or look and feel. So it shouldn't matter what part of the company you're in or what type of process you're looking at. It should look similar, okay? It should have that same theme, that same look and feel. And what we found from the time that we started is that that became more and more difficult to do without some really fine-tuned standards and best practices for the model. So I think that's really important as well. Now, as many of you guys probably know, in working with different systems, I think one of the things that I'm most used to, and I'm sure many of you are as well, is that when you have a system and you want even a minor change to the system, maybe a field change in the drop-down, or you want a different option in your toolbar, those types of things are usually in systems, especially in highly regulated industries, not very easy to implement. They cost a lot of money. There's a whole change request process. And so we tend to avoid making those changes as much as possible. With the use of our model, in our case, we found that it's incredibly important to make sure that you're willing to adapt. And so essentially, when we do need to make changes to fields in a dropdown, or what objects we're including in the model, where we can have associations between objects, or maybe even what we have in our templates, we need to be able to adapt to those change requests that we receive to customers fairly quickly, and we need to be flexible. And again, I know that was a theme as well that Ryan had gone through in his presentation. And so that's really, really important to be flexible. We know that the system itself is flexible, but the governance that you have around it also needs to be flexible. So for us, we have made significant changes to the model, and actually, I would go as far as saying the model that we had even as of summer last year is very different than the model we've had this year. So we've actually changed the color, the theme, the design of our homepage completely. We have done so much, and a lot of it has been based on continuous feedback that we receive and that we continue to encourage and solicit from our end users. And then sustaining. So I mentioned earlier that we were really able to expand our operating model, our operating and resource model around maintaining the process maps and the content within the model. So as the scope continues to increase and you have more and more maps, more functions and more processes and information that you're maintaining, your operating model around maintaining that information is going to have to continue to grow and become a bit more complex to address that. So for us, that's why I think that diagram or component is really, really helpful. And then I know with some future product capabilities as well, it sounds like they'll just continue to help support driving us in that direction. So it's really important to know going into it that if you start with, say, a team of, one or two individuals who are maintaining this, it's going to be very, very difficult to sustain that over time if you plan on having your model grow. So it's important to continue to grow with it, to evolve, right, with the customers as their use of the model evolves and as the content evolves. So that's really important as well. And that's why for us, we do anticipate that the number of individuals who are mapping and contributing to the content in the model will increase significantly, especially as we're expanding the content quite a bit right now. And then last, but certainly not least, is to be open. I think some of this isn't even just to changes in the system, but just the way that the model is being used. So we've had some really interesting ideas and that have come to us from current users, from potential users internally, on how we can actually use the model in a way that isn't being used right now by us. And so I think it's important to keep an open mind. And so for us, you know, we always talk about how this product for us really has so much potential. And as much as we have done so much and come so far with this, there's still a lot of untapped potential. And so we're very, very much open to new ideas from across the company on how we can, you know, continue to evolve the model, change the way it's even being used, and make it another efficient tool for another part of the company where it's currently not being used that way. So I think it's just very important to think of that, those new and innovative types of ideas or solutions. Okay, so that's what I have. And, you know, I think too, I'll mention for questions that come up later, I know that what I walk through is very high level. I myself, as we have expanded the operating model and how we have used this, we've also chosen to move to a more in-house model for our resources. And, you know, every company is different in the way they do that. And so I am the owner, the business process owner for the model, and can answer those questions at a high level, but I am also now a super user. So I can get, I know enough to be dangerous, I think, in the system, which unfortunately for folks like Tony can probably attest to.
Great transition. Thank you so much, Danielle. It's super interesting. And now we are going to hand the ball over to Manuel, who's actually going to bring us home with a short demonstration of Evolve Harvester. So take it away, Manuel.
Yes, I think I had a couple of slides to go through first. Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. Do you want to take me through the slides, or shall I show mine? It's up to you. Can you still hear me, Marianne? Can anyone hear me?
We lost the slides.
Yeah, hold on one second. We lost because you started to share. So let me just show my screen again. Okay, here we go.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Oh, great, thank you. So let me introduce you to Evolve Harvester. So Evolve Harvester is a new feature that we developed for Evolve. And we developed it to address some of the pain points that Tony mentioned earlier. So just to remind what Tony introduced earlier, building and keeping an enterprise architecture repository and keeping it up to date, you know, it's really hard. You know, it takes an awful lot of time, and typically enterprise architects and, you know, architects in general spend an awful lot of their time building and maintaining that repository. So it consumes a lot of resources, not only from the architecture community, but also from the SMEs community, because typically, you know, architects will just run workshops, you know, to find out the information they need to populate that repository. The issue with that is that often the repository is incomplete, the information is incomplete, it's out of date, and it contains inaccuracies. And as Tony mentioned earlier, the outcome of that is that there is a lack of trust in the information and the outcome of the analysis performed by some of the architects. So another aspect is the detail of the information. So if you gather information manually, you have to keep it at a fairly high level of abstraction. You can't, you know, model all the details. So what is Evolve Harvester? So Evolve Harvester is based on an integration with our data intelligence suite. And what it does, it helps collect a complete and accurate application ecosystem information. So the information you have is completely correct, it's complete, and that's because the harvesting of the information is done in an automated fashion. It's not done manually. So we're using, you know, that harvesting capability of our data intelligence suite. And as Tony alluded earlier, the data intelligence suite not only looks into the data at rest, so what data resides, you know, in the data stores and the databases, you know, within your applications, but it also looks at data in motion as well. So that means data being transferred from one application to another. And what that allows us to do by integrating with the data intelligence suite is to identify integrations between applications. And once again, you know, all that information is key to any architecture activities undertook by enterprise architects. That information is provided seamlessly to erwin Evolve, so it's all done in the back end. It's updated as well, so it can run on a schedule, you know, on a daily, weekly, or monthly basis. And it also provides links, you know, from and to Evolve into the data intelligence suite. So I'm ready for the demo now. Marianne, if you want to allow me to share my screen.
Yes, Victoria will make you presenter. There you go.
Okay, so you should at some point see my screen. If you could shout when you do.
We see it. Can you make the window larger? Or maximize your window? Is that it?
It's already maximized. Let me.
Okay, it's good to go then.
Screen. Can you say it like that? Okay, great. So,
great.
If you're not familiar with the product, you know, this is the interface that is used by the users, consumers of the architectural information and the modelers as well in Evolve. So, as an example here, I will create a new application. So, as an enterprise architect, you will look through your catalog, you know, the catalog that Tony mentioned earlier, and look for an application. So, in this case here, I will look at an ODS, an operational data store, and I can find here that, you know, that application doesn't exist. So I'm going to create it quickly and just put a name against it, no other information, and save it. And a lot of the time, you know, when you start modeling your architecture, you know, that's what you're presented with. You know, it's just an object which contains very little to no information. So if I open that application now, I can see that I've got absolutely, you know, very little information, no information on interface or architecture diagram. So these views, by the way, are automatically generated, and because I don't have any information behind the scenes, and that's nothing that gets produced. So what I will do next is actually run the scheduler manually. So something that will happen behind the scene, you know, so just close your eyes for a second whilst this is being done. And that will just go and gather the information from the data intelligence suite tool and import it into Evolve. So whilst that's running, I'm going to show you briefly the data intelligence suite tool. So log in to it. So one aspect of the data intelligence suite is the metadata manager. And as you can see here, I've got a list of applications, one of them being the ODS system I'm looking for. So the guys, you know, doing data governance, you know, I've already, you know, harvested the information for me, and all I'm doing here is actually importing that into Evolve. And as you can see here, you know, the application contains, you know, the data stores, tables, entities, you know, to a very, very, very fine level of detail. I won't take you through it right now, but you can go through, you know, the lineage, you know, of that data, you know, through various systems and so on. Another aspect of the data intelligence is the data in motion. So here I can see the how the data is actually integrated between applications, the transformation that occurs as well, how the attributes are being mapped, and so on. And that's the information we'll use to identify integrations between applications. So next, I am going to go back to Evolve and see if the integration has finished running. Just refreshing the page to see if the information has come through. And yes, it looks like the information has come through now. So if I look at the same ODS system I was looking at earlier, I can see now that I've got additional information. I know what database is being used behind the scene. I know what data it contains. I've got the list of data entities, supporting entities, and the integration diagram has also been created automatically for me as well. So based on the data harvested automatically into these systems, I can now have an architectural view built automatically for me. So an activity that would take, weeks and months in the past now, can be done, by the click of a mouse. So it's quite efficient. In terms of the information that is contained in Evolve, you can then, drill down into some of these integrations and understand, the source and target applications and how the attributes are being mapped to each other. Another important point is that these can be linked directly to the data intelligence suite. So if I needed to find out more detailed information about this integration, I now have a link from Evolve into my data intelligence suite. So I can click here, and that will take me directly into that integration in the mapping manager. That will give me additional detail about the how physically that integration is being implemented and so on. So great level of details if I require it at that level. Back into Evolve, one last thing I'd like to show is the fact that, okay, now we've imported all that information into Evolve. We've got that application architecture and data architecture being built automatically for me. So once again, something that would take a vast amount of time to get right, is done automatically. But you can now also infer links between the data and the processes. So if your processes already knew which applications were being used, you can infer which data is being used there as well, and then infer movement of data between processes. So if I take, for example, a process, let's take HR hiring management. Let's take that for example. So I've got a process here called hiring management, and if I look at the data side of things, I can then start to model, which entities that have been imported that actually are being used by that process. And I can be more precise if I want by identifying, the entities that are being produced, used, the typical CRUD analysis. So you can use the import to automatically infer that information, but you can, if you wanted to as well, be very specific as to which entity or attribute is being used by that process. So being a lot more precise around that mapping. And once you've done that, then you can the tool reproduces some business lineage for you as well. So you will know that, for example, here your contract entity is being used by these processes, and these processes are part of a wider capability. So you can quickly identify the impact of the data on the business. So for example, if you identified some issues with data quality about your contract, you can quickly identify which parts of the business will be impacted and the scale of the impact as well, and also what needs to be done to address that data quality issue. So this is it, Marianne. This was a very quick demo. So if anyone has additional questions, we'll be more than welcome to take them at the end of the session. And if you want a more in-depth demo, we can run that with you as well.
Thanks so much. I appreciate that. That was really interesting, and hopefully folks will like to hear more. We were just discussing that we needed to put together a video of that so everybody could take a look at it and share it with folks in their organization. Well, I hope that you have had an interesting 90 minutes with us. Certainly, I think there's been some really tremendous value, especially as always with the customer presentations from Ryan and from Danielle. I just want to make a couple of closing comments, and then I actually have a question queued up for both of them before we end. Just want to share with you a couple of resources, ways to stay in the game, stay connected to us. We are planning a virtual event, and that's a company-wide event called Erwin Insights. just save the date, October 13th and 14th. We'll be sending out some additional information. We have done a call for ideas and presentations and papers. So if there's anybody in the sound of my voice or any of our speakers today that would be interested in getting together and doing a session, we're looking for, for people that'll be interested in chatting on panels, as well as presenting the kinds of use cases and case studies that we saw today. And again, lots more info will be coming to you on that. On the right-hand side, you see here an image of a brand new resource that we've had, and it's called the Peer Paper. It actually is based on information that comes directly from product reviews that folks have done for us on IT Central Station. And we'd love to see you download that really interesting piece of content talking about all different aspects of success in enterprise architecture. As always, we'd love to have you subscribe to the blog. We're always putting new contact out there, and join the community. And absolutely, your reps are the first stop to learn more about anything that you saw and heard today. And then just a final plug, we are in the process right this minute of working with Gartner on the Enterprise Architecture Magic Quadrant. Many of you know it, many of you used it as help to build criteria for making the selection to deploy Erwin Evolve. And we need your help. We need more reviews. So one of the things that we're going to send to you in the follow-up email to this is a link to do a review of Erwin Evolve on the Gartner Peer Insights site, and we would really appreciate the time and energy. It's about 15 minutes, completely confidential, so we never see who fills it out. Your identity is never revealed. Nothing about your company is ever revealed. It's all completely anonymized, and again, really helps us to let Gartner know how our customers feel about us and where we're doing well, and then also where we're not. So we take these very seriously, and we appreciate your help and your time. So just 2 quick questions. And then if we have time for a third, we'll see if we get a third one in. So Ryan, on your high-level impact assessment slide that you talked about, how do you think that culture impacted the success of this initiative?
So there's the old saying, culture will eat your strategy for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, right? So if you haven't heard that, definitely keep in mind. So I think, for us, culture was probably a huge impact. There were certain things that we had to set foundation for and kind of prove the little wins that then helped us kind of go beyond and kind of take the next step after that, right? So it was a huge impact, but then I think at the end of the day, it actually helped turn the corner to kind of gain the importance because we demonstrated those wins to our senior leaders and we proved to the operations that we're there to help. And then now they started becoming the advocates and speaking up when they were talking with their peers. So
yeah, that makes a ton of sense for sure. And then final question over to Danielle. So lots of admiration for your single model, and people that want to know, what was the biggest challenge if you had to pick one thing in really building that single model across such a diverse enterprise as Astellas?
Yeah, so I think it's maintaining a centralized maintenance or operating model for that. So again, it's, of course, as you start to expand the scope and the content and the user community, more and more groups who want to be in the model, they essentially just want to have control of their own little piece of the model. And that's very difficult to do as part of a single model because there is no piece of the model. It's all connected. So that's where we really had to collaborate and be really open to that collaboration with different groups across the company, and really find a way where we can make it so that it's a benefit to them, so they can continue focusing on the job they were hired for, and they can still have a say in maintaining the model, but essentially, again, that maintenance for the model is still very much central.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense too. Nothing like keeping it alive. Well, I just like to thank all of you for taking 90 minutes of your incredibly precious time out to spend it with us today. And again, warm thanks to both Ryan and to Danielle for some really interesting presentations, and to Tony and Wendy and Manuel as well. And we look forward to seeing you all in October. In the meantime, we're going to be putting together some additional topics. So you'll look to hear from us on other webinars that are upcoming, but always terrific to spend some time with the Evolve user group. And thanks everybody for joining the session today.
Thank you, everybody.